right, welcome in everybody. This is going to be episode number 9 of the Monty and Murdy College Football Show. Thank y'all for joining in with us. We got a good episode for y'all. This is a big week. Monty, what's up, man? How's it going?
It's good. It's going good. Yeah, like you said, another big episode. Well, this is probably the biggest episode. A lot to talk about come UT at OU. So excited to talk about that. But we got other stuff to talk about first, of course. Talk about the last OU game, last UT game, and the other games that we predicted. I went 4-4 this past week, so still some work to be done. But
I believe I
glad
was
to be
five.
back.
I believe I was 5-3.
Yeah, you got the
UNO.
UNLV game, right? And then, yeah, I think that was the only one that really differed.
Yeah. So for this episode for y'all, we're gonna break it down. We got our week 3 recap. We'll go in, give y'all a quick little update on the new top 25 that came out, and then we'll go through preview some games that we got, some big matchups this week. A little bit better week for big matchups in week 4 versus compared to week 3. We'll finish up with our duds and dubs of the week, and then Monty will hit us with his weekly hot take. All right, let's go ahead.
Yep.
Like I said,
No,
I know we're gonna get lost in the weeds on one of these games, the Tennessee versus OU game that we got this week. So we'll go ahead. We'll start rolling in. First game on the recap from week 3. Tulane, the Green Wave came to Norman to play OU. OU ended up winning the game 31-19. Overall, just a couple notes I had from it, man. The offense looked improved, especially in the first half. Defense really dominated this game for OU. Only allowed Tulane to score 12 points through all 4 quarters, which this is a Tulane team that had just played Kansas State all the way into the fourth quarter the week before in week 2. Man, the O-line, the Oklahoma offensive line, they're still working on some stuff. Hopefully we got some returners coming back this week. We're hopefully plug in with some more experienced depth there. The line play, they kind of switched up. First 2 weeks we did a lot of inside zone. It's kind of the main priority play of this offense, but there was a little bit of gap blocking scheme on this one. It was nice to see that kind of rotated in. It seemed to have a little bit of a positive effect for the run game there. And a couple other notes I got, man. Taylor Tatum, he looked dynamic in the couple plays that he got. He's kind of missed some blocking assignments. You know, he's still got some stuff. He's a freshman. He was the number 1 running back in the country. He was a guy who I said to be on the lookout for coming into this year. You're starting to see him. You're seeing why he's the number 1. You know, some of the easiest things for a running back to do is to get the ball handed to him and him to run. But, you know, he does kind of struggle with some of the other stuff to figure out. The pass blocking, who he's got in pass blocking schemes. And then whenever he doesn't have anybody, they have a 6-man protection. It's like, okay, how quickly do you recognize that and then flare, go out to the flat or, possibly make a check down for your quarterback. So that's still some stuff he's working through. Overall, I think OU, they were in control for the majority of this ball game. Obviously, the pick 6 from Jackson Arnold didn't look good. It was part of that run protection scheme for Taylor Tatum. He just didn't pick up the Mike Backer coming through the hole. It was just he just came blitzing right straight through. It was a pretty straight pickup, but he ended up going out to the flat, didn't even touch him. So Jackson Arnold to step up around him, and then Jackson Arnold just did what you can't do. Panicked under pressure, threw a ball, put it out late over the middle. Linebacker came up, pick 6.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
overall,
that's.
yeah.
Go ahead. I'll let you finish.
I was just saying, overall, man, OU looked improved. However, they do not. We'll talk about it later, but they still have some stuff that I'm looking for them to catch up on. But overall, a good game. Beating a good Tulane team. That some people do consider to be in the running for that Group of 5 playoff spot. That's a good win for OU, and hopefully they can continue to improve going into next week.
Yeah, that's the only note I had on the OU game was just that it seems like Jackson Arnold will put the ball in harm's way. But other than that, I think people don't give going into this next week, especially. I don't think people give OU enough credit. I know it's Tulane's a group of 5 team, but we've seen in the past couple of years, Tulane's one of those teams that time and time again shows that they are just a really good football team, group of 5 or otherwise. So I do think that is a good win. I watched the first half, and people being where I live at, obviously the Texas fans, they were saying how OU wasn't that good this year, and throughout the first half, and I was like, man, I don't know, because I think Tulane's a really good football team, one of those bubble teams. So with that being said, yeah, other than I think if Jackson Arnold can control the mistakes next game, and your O-line can really step up, it's going to be different than what people think, for sure.
Yeah. One thing we did see come out of this game that I didn't touch on, we saw pretty much the development of Jackson Arnold as a running quarterback. It's not something that had been shown, in really any of his other 3 previous games. They did show it a little bit early on last season. They put him in some special packages. It didn't really work well. They tried to use him as like the belldozer. I don't know if do you remember the belldozer package from like the early,
I sure do.
They tried to use Jackson like that last year, and it just didn't work out. He's not really that kind of player. However, he did show in this game against Tulane that he is a dynamic. I mean, he almost put up, I think he had 97 rushing yards. So, I mean, overall, really good rushing performance out of Jackson. And it did, it does give something for Tennessee to prepare for, at least on that front.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so moving on, man. That's all I got. We're going to talk OU and Tennessee plenty on this one. OU or Kent State at Tennessee. Tennessee ended up winning 71-0. What you got on that one?
Yeah, I have more notes than I probably should. I'll make this quick because obviously it was 71-0. I'm sure a lot of people don't really care about hearing about it, but just a couple things that I watched. Dylan Sampson's one of the best running backs in the country. Kind of unexpected. Like, we knew he was going to be good as Tennessee fans, but I don't think we realized he was going to be this good. And that's props also to the O-line play that we're getting out of a veteran O-line. But with that being said, I think Dylan Sampson is one of the more talented backs in the country right now, at least, and it's good to have that. You can see Heupel loves to run the ball. Weirdly enough, him, at least in 2022, especially when he came to Tennessee, but especially 2022, Hendon Hooker, it was that air raid, fast, high octane offense. But man, he loves to run the ball, or at least now he does, because that's what we've been doing. What was it? 456 yards on the ground. I know people are going to say, "Oh, it's Kent State," but national championship contender teams are supposed to do what they did to Kent State when they have the opportunity, and that's my point. I mean, it was 740 yards of total offense, 456 on the ground, and our defense held Kent State to 112 total yards of offense. So people can say, "Oh, we haven't had a real test yet, and OU will be that first test," which is, the real SEC test. Go. Dog getting nosy again. But OU is definitely that first real SEC test. Obviously, it's our first SEC matchup of the season. However, in these past 3 games, Tennessee has done what one of the best teams in the country should be doing to the teams that they're playing. And NC State, I don't think they're as good as people thought they were going to be, but they're still no slouch. And that's still a Power 5 team or Power 4 team, that we took care of business in Charlotte. It was a neutral site, but in North Carolina. So that's my thing. I think the defense looks like a national championship, a potential defense. Run game looks that dominant. And Heupel's hot right now. So I think we're sitting pretty good right now. But obviously with this next week, we'll really see how good we are based on how we play in Norman.
Yeah, one thing, so just wanted to touch on, you already kind of hit on it, a big difference between, that 2022 Tennessee team that was so competitive, were fringe national championship contenders was, hey, it was pretty much they were going to hit you with a high-octane passing offense, and they're going to score more points than you is simply what it's going to be. However, the difference between that team and this team, this 2024 Tennessee team, is this one has a defense and it has a stout running game. and it can also still, if you want to get a shootout with them, they'll still score points with you all the way up to 70, 80 points.
Yeah.
I mean, Kent State, this game, Tennessee really took their foot off the gas because this game very easily could have been 100 plus.
It was the most points scored in a half by any team in at least the last 20 years is the one that I saw. So it's very impressive. Obviously, it was. I think you remember I texted you watching that game saying I think that this is kind of hypeful, saying for next week hey, I'm coming.
Mm-hmm.
So
Almost
we'll
like
see,
a
man.
lookout. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. But yes, I think this is definitely in the short period that Heupel's been at Tennessee. This is his most complete team since he's been in Knoxville.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, that's going to be that's the big difference that separates this Tennessee team from others. They do look like they're going to be more comparative to, how a national championship team looks. They're just good in all three phases, whether it be special teams, defense, offense. Like they are a well-rounded unit, and they're elite. At least from what we've seen in 3 weeks, they look like they can play with just about any team in the country.
Yep, I 100% agree. It all goes back to we'll see how they fare in Norman. So
Yeah.
only time will tell.
All right, so moving on, we had another matchup that we both predicted wrongly here, probably very wrongly. Arizona went to Kansas State, and Kansas State downright dominated them, winning 31-7. Man, if you looked at this game from if you just compare the box score to the stats, it almost doesn't line up, if that makes sense. From the stats perspective, this looked like this was a very close game, almost a shootout game if you don't look at the score. And then you look at the score and you're like, well, that's not what it was at all. And it was just, Kansas State just dominated the red zone area and, just didn't allow Arizona to actually get in the end zone or actually put up any points.
Yeah, no, I've here. I just said it was obviously we were wrong. So to start, I said I severely misjudged one of these teams. So, and it's too early to tell, I think, in the season. So whether Arizona's not as good as they were last year, with the new head coach and everything, or K-State's just really good, I misjudged one of them because I predicted it completely incorrectly. However, whether it was just a bad game for Arizona or just a really good game for K-State, K-State played an all-around really good team, a really, really good game. They're flying around on special teams. I believe they had a defensive touchdown, pick six, and a return for a touchdown. So I mean, it was like all around play on the K-State side, and obviously with it being in Manhattan, I just think Arizona never really had a chance from the start, just because of how well K-State did play. So we'll see how both their seasons end up playing out. Obviously, the Big 12. In my opinion, and I've listened to a couple other people's podcasts, and they seem to think the same thing. Big 12 is going to be the most fun conference this year, and so we'll see how these two teams end up faring throughout. But yeah, like I said, I probably misjudged one of these teams severely.
Yeah, one note I had is that it seems Kansas State seems to ride as kind of Avery Johnson does. He is a young quarterback, so they do kind of come with some peaks and valleys, and Kansas State almost seems to ride those along with him. Kind of as he goes is how they go, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
If he's on and he's having a good day, Kansas State's going to have a good day.
Right.
But if he's not on,
what seemingly happened there was that Avery Johnson did have a really good day.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing that people got to remember, right? They lose their starting quarterback to Ohio State, and then so he's got to come in, and he's a very talented guy, like you said, and I think he's kind of coming into his own, as we saw in that game.
Well, I think at least from what I heard. Now, granted, I don't know the truth to this or not, but what came out of K-State was that it was they wanted to, you say loss, they kind of put it in parentheses or quotation marks because they believe Avery Johnson to be the more talented quarterback out of him and Will Howard, and they didn't want to risk losing Avery Johnson by keeping Will Howard another year. So it was almost one of those things he might have been kind of encouraged, or at least that's what it comes out from the Kansas State side.
Yeah, well, hey, I mean, and that very well could be true. I obviously you as an Oklahoma fan, me as a Tennessee fan, we kind of know that's where we want to. We kind of, especially as fans, but also in the program at certain points, you want to push kind of want to push that, get the new guy in because you have this new
Mhm.
guy coming in, and he is, he's supposed to be the next, big thing. So yeah, we as fan bases know that. So I don't doubt it if it is true. But nonetheless, he's coming into his own, and we saw it again in that game.
Yeah, overall, big win by Kansas State. They got another big matchup that we're going to talk about here in our Week 4 preview against BYU. Next up, we got Boston College at Missouri. Really
We
close
were so
game.
close, man. We were
So,
so close.
Boston College almost pulled the upset out. Overall, I mean, BC gave them a game. I just don't think they got the horses in the barn, as you might say. They just didn't match up talent wise. Obviously, Bill O'Brien hasn't been there as long as Eli Drinkowitz at Missouri. So Bill O'Brien, they seem to be a very well coached team. They don't really beat themselves. They tend to slow down the pace of the game, and playing that way, it'll keep you in a lot of football games.
Right, and I do think this is a really good Boston College team for what it is. I still am a firm believer that Mizzou is not what people think they are. It's not, other than the fact that I do hate them. It is the fact that I genuinely believe that they're just not there yet to be where they're ranked. Do I believe they're top 15? Probably, but I mean, this numbers, and we'll obviously talk about the top 25 here soon. Very happy that Tennessee and them swapped there because I believe, take the bias out of it, I do genuinely believe that Tennessee's roster this year is better than Mizzou's. So, but no, like you said, BC, you could watch the game. They don't beat themselves, and I don't think they played a bad game. I just think that the talent wasn't there for 4 quarters with an SEC team that does have a talented roster.
Yeah, and big note I had coming out of this one was we kind of got, Luther Burden. He's viewed as probably one of the top, if not the top, wide receiver in the country.
Absolutely.
He's been kind of non-existent for Missouri the first 2 weeks. Hadn't really had a big impact on the game. However, this week he did. He showed up big for them, and they probably couldn't have won this game or pulled this game out of Boston College without his performance this week.
Yeah, that's what makes him a playmaker. Obviously, sorry, I got something software update on this computer. Anyways, yeah, that's what makes him a playmaker. I mean, he's going to be the one that separates the game and makes the difference. So, no, he is definitely one of, if not the best receiver in the game right now.
Yeah, just for record, Luther Burden, he 6 receptions, 117 yards, and a TD. I also thought Brady Cook, Missouri's quarterback, I thought he showed some real grip in this game in the fourth quarter. And another point I had, just a quick little note, is it looks like Missouri may have established a running game it also looked like they was kind of absent those first 2 weeks. So, they might be starting to come into that running game. I believe it was Cody Schrader, their running back last year, who had a great performance.
Yeah, he was the one, and he was the one that ran all over Tennessee last year too.
Yeah, and replacing his production was always going to be a big part of this year, if whether or not they could do that and replicate that same success. And this game, it looks like they were at least able to replace it, having at least a team total of 176 yards on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, man, we don't have to talk much about this one. There isn't much to say about this one.
Yeah.
Bama at Wisconsin. Bama winning 42-10. Losing Tyler Van Dyke early for Wisconsin pretty much eliminated any chance they had in this game. Overall, I still don't think they were going to be able to pull it off. Bama they came out swinging, and they seemed to be rounded into form, or at least rounded into their new form under Kalen DeBoer.
Yeah. This was obviously the one of my hot takes. I thought Wisconsin was going to keep it close, at least in the first half. But yeah, like you said, with Tyler Van Dyke going down, it changes things. So we'll count it as a hot take incorrect, but it's got an asterisk next to it. But no, Bama was rolling from the freaking get-go in this game. I said that, Bama looks Saban-esque right now. I really think that they're a lot better than, and people can make the argument that, hey, it's still Bama or Saban's guys, whatever, but it's, they're still getting coached by DeBoer. DeBoer still understands Jalen Milroe's style of play, And you look at Jalen Milroe, and I mean, he's going to be the most physically gifted, athletic guy on the field every single Saturday. So with that, I mean, yeah, Bama looks really good right now. I think they look like an extremely dangerous team. I think that they're, in the top 4 with what it is now. I still think that Alabama should be 3. Ohio State should be behind them because I think Alabama's better than what people think they are. And people still think, of course, that Alabama's still really good. Obviously most people know that because it is Alabama. It has that roster. But I just don't think it's changed as much as people think. And I think that Alabama is one of those serious teams this year.
Yeah, man, we're going to find out a whole lot of Alabama here come week 5 whenever they got to play Georgia after this bye week. And, I'm sure College Game Day is going to be there. I mean, if I was a bet man, if I could find somebody who would take that bet for me, I would go ahead.
Yeah.
I would go ahead and lay it. So we'll find out a lot about how prepared or how, if Alabama is any different than they were last year. We'll see that gap really good here week 5. So I'm looking forward to previewing that matchup here on the next episode.
Yeah, no, that'll be an exciting one. That's the thing too. Outside of that Georgia game, they got a gauntlet coming up too, and hopefully, if Tennessee proves to be something real this year, they have some pretty tough games coming up.
Yeah. So moving on, we had a pretty exciting matchup. UNLV at Kansas. UNLV ended up actually going in their fourth quarter comeback, ended up winning 23-20. Man, UNLV may very well be the best Group of 5 team, at least that we've seen so far into this season.
Yeah, that's one team that I'm done doubting them. I was always used to growing up, with the UNLV team that you're like, oh, UNLV has a football team. I had no idea. I found out that UNLV had a football team when I went to the Boise State bowl game, and it was in Vegas, and it was the Mako Bowl at the time. And it was their stadium. It's a pretty cool stadium. It's nothing big. It's nothing monumental, but it's pretty nice. But I found out that they had a football team when I was like 10. But anyways, no, they are probably right now, after these 3 weeks, probably my Group of 5 team that makes the playoff as of right now. Just based off these 3 weeks. I mean, they already have 2 Power 4 wins, and they have Syracuse later in the year. And so, if they can pull off the Mountain West, and they'll have to play Boise State too at some point this season as well. So we'll see there. But just based on right now, through these 3 weeks, UNLV is probably my Group of 5 team to make it.
Yeah, that's a top 25 matchup, or a possible top 25 matchup nobody really had on their bingo card this year of a possible top 25 matchup of UNLV and Boise State. But man, this really just boiled down to I don't know if is there any question marks about Kansas coming out of this game? There has to be at least some, right? I mean, just with their inability to score in the second half, they only put up 3 points in the third and fourth quarter, which really just allowed UNLV to, UNLV didn't really dominate them. They scored 10 points, but, it was enough to overcome them.
Right. No, I mean, that's the thing. It's, obviously they went into Lawrence and were able to pull it off. But again, it's one of those things where it is still too early to really know. Like, UNLV could really be that good, and KU still could be a pretty good team. Or, it's just UNLV's playing these Power 4 teams that are just not that good this year, maybe. We don't know. But right now, it's looking like UNLV is just a good team, and KU's a good team as well. But UNLV was able to hang in there and then come back and win that game. They looked good, so.
Yeah, they did. With how good the rest of the Big 12 looks, I think KU may struggle a little bit. Taking on teams like Oklahoma State, Utah, Kansas State, even BYU, who looks really good. We'll get to them here a little bit later.
I think BYU's been getting some votes, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they're coming right in on the fringe. They're 3-0 with a big matchup this week.
They got 2 votes, but they're still getting votes.
Yeah. Next up, we got West Virginia versus Pitt, the backyard brawl. Pitt ended up winning 38-34. Another game me and you predicted wrong, man. This was, to be honest, if I looked at like the slate of games for this week or this past week. This is the one where I think game day probably should have went. Just with they have a true rivalry game. One with a lot of history. Now, granted, that doesn't mean anything against the LSU South Carolina game. That was a great,
which,
phenomenal
which
game
ended up
itself.
being an instant classic. But at the time, we didn't know. I'd have to agree with you there.
Yeah, I just think you have a little bit more. Whenever you have a weak slate, man, I'd like to lean towards tradition. Because I think some of the the old rivalry matchup teams that have been playing for 80, 100 years. I like to lean towards those matchups, just because it kind of roots college football back to its tradition. So I like to see those games get a lot of coverage. But overall, good game, close game. Man, Pitt may really be competitive in the ACC this year.
Yep, that was another thing I was listening to. Man, I listened to freaking all of them. I think it might have been it was either Josh Pate or Joel Klatt, but he was talking about Pitt is like, and especially with how seemingly weak the ACC might be this year, other than Miami, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So who else is going to be there, right? And people seem to forget, people that don't really know a lot about Pitt. Pitt won the ACC a couple years ago, so they're no stranger to the big game, to the late season big games like an ACC championship against a top ACC team. Another thing, and I'll address the score, I guess, real quick, because it's a toss-up rivalry. We could have guessed it right or wrong. I mean, it was one
Yeah.
of those games where it's flip a coin. But another thing, Eli Holstein, their quarterback, people don't realize he's got just right about the same stats as Kenny Pickett did in 2022 when Kenny Pickett was in New York. Or he didn't end up going to New York, but he was one of the Heisman finalists.
Yeah.
I believe he didn't go to New York, right? He wasn't physically there.
I don't believe so. I believe he was top 5 though. I
Yeah,
think they only bring top 3 to New York.
yeah. So if he was, I knew he was top 5 at least. But Holstein threw 3 games, 9 touchdowns, 2 picks, 936 yards. Pickett through the same 3 weeks, 10 touchdowns, 1 pick, 936 yards. So same amount of yards, 1 more touchdown, 1 less pick. Other than that, but the only difference is this guy's a freshman. So it's like, is Pitt one of those teams that we should be talking about in the ACC?
I mean, I think it's one that I wasn't necessarily on. I mean, my preseason radar, but it definitely should be. Well, dang, I can't. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong Heisman voting. Sorry, I wanted to go try to track that down to see.
No, you're good.
Either way, man, Pitt looks good, and even after watching West Virginia, granted, Garrett Green had a terrible. I don't know. Did you watch the last drive on that game?
No, I didn't.
Well, Garrett
Or
Green.
I haven't yet. I need to.
Yeah, I think he had. Man, he probably had. I don't want to get the time wrong, but it was a limited time. I mean, maybe a minute 20 left, whatever. Fourth quarter, last drive of the game, and man, Garrett Green almost goes and throws. He almost threw 3 interceptions in a row until he finally threw one. So it was like 1st and 10. Almost threw a pick. Guy dropped it. Second and 10, almost threw another pick, and you're 3rd and 10. You're like, well, he's probably just gonna. He's almost got to throw a pick this time, and he ended up doing it. So yeah, that was a pretty tough thing for Garrett Green to, or at least for me to watch there. You got to be able to perform, especially in those late moments when you're that experienced quarterback. So that may give West Virginia, if that tendency, if that's a trend and not just an outlier, that may end up giving West Virginia some problems later in a very competitive Big 12 where you're going to be winning those, close late 1-score games.
Well, yeah, because you're going to have a lot of those this year in the Big 12. It's certainly looking to be that way. With teams like Oklahoma State, Iowa State, K-State, UCF. Even, I mean, you got all these Big 12 teams that are seemingly showing that they're capable of pulling it out at the end. And if West Virginia is not going to be able to do that, like I said, if it starts trending that way where he can't get it done, you're going to lose some close games, and you can end up like Nebraska last year.
Yeah.
Losing like 8 games by 6 or less, and they're 3-9. So
Yeah, or Oklahoma in 2022.
yeah, so what,
Um,
7-5 or 6-6 that year?
6-7 is what we ended up
So
with
yeah,
them.
but yeah,
Six
exactly.
and
So
six and six through the regular season.
okay, yeah,
Um, so we'll finish up with the last game on our preview was LSU versus South Carolina. Man, we barely predicted this one wrong. I think, uh, the turning point in this game had to be South Carolina losing their quarterback Sellers. Um, man, I think if they keep them, they win this game probably pretty handily. Um, but I mean, they were up 17-0 on LSU, and credit to LSU, they battled back. But overall, I think this game was about South Carolina. Just you've heard the expression, if you haven't been there before, you don't know how to handle it. And that was kind of what it showed with South Carolina, is that they hadn't been there up on a ranked opponent, at least under this, or at least this team that is there, the group of guys they have
mm-hmm.
there now.
Mm-hmm.
They hadn't been there before, and it was almost like they were kind of figuring that out as they were going through with just some dumb penalties. They had 2 pick sixes that got called back for, let's call them, controversial penalties. And overall, just a really tough loss for South Carolina here in a game that they were more than capable of winning.
Yeah, well, that's the key word too. They were more than capable, and I think we understood that, and that's why we picked them. And I know a little bit about Columbia, South Carolina, and that stadium. That stadium is extremely underrated for how loud and dangerous it actually is. Yeah, no, you basically covered what I was going to cover. Obviously, early on, it looked over. I was watching that game in real time, and said they went up 7. Going into a place like that, it's hard enough to be down 7-0, let alone 17-0. I really thought that game was over early. That place was rocking. They were into it. It was like you saw that LSU sideline. They didn't look defeated, but they looked a little concerned about what was going on. And credit to LSU. They showed some grit and they showed some real moxie at the end, especially in the second half. I think that's the difference between Brian Kelly and Beamer. Just experience, I think. It's a lot easier to be on that home side than on that away side, unless you're like a coach in Brian Kelly and you've been there before. At these big prime time, that wasn't a prime time game, but those big games, a college game day game, and obviously didn't show like they were too worried, despite being down, and obviously ended up pulling it out in the end. So big win for LSU. Obviously, we predicted it wrong. And for those who don't know, it was 36-33 was the final score, but South Carolina was up 17-0 in the first quarter. I think it was first quarter. It was first half for sure. But
I got you. But yeah, man, I almost felt bad for South Carolina in this one, because they looked, even right now, I would say South Carolina with Sellers playing is probably the better team.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with you. I don't think LSU's that as good this year.
Garrett Nussmeier, granted, his stat line ends up cleaning up a lot because of the removal of the 2 pick sixes. Granted, he still got the one interception because the penalty came after on a block that they called unnecessary roughness when the guy, he hit him with it was a hands block. And Garrett Nussmeier, I'll give him credit, man. He did a real good LeBron James flop. Really helped sell the block. But yeah, it was overall just, like I said, it was an inconsistent performance from Garrett Nussmeier. Whenever he looked, you watched him in the USC game, and it almost looked like he couldn't miss. This game, you definitely saw, hey, there is a gap between him and Jaden Daniels from last year. So, like I said, I don't think LSU is going to be able to carry the same kind of momentum that they had last year.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to say right now because we can say that, but at the same time they just pulled that win out. With as you said, Nussmeier not playing like he did against USC. well, the other USC, I guess you could say, but still being able to pull that win out. You could also argue that, and like I said, I don't think they are, but you could argue that, great teams do that, when things go wrong and you can still pull those games out. People can argue that that's what great teams do. So experienced teams, at least, like I said, I don't think they're I don't even think they might make the playoff. I don't think they're a playoff contender though, when it comes to national championship. But I mean, hey, they pulled that one out, and I do think South Carolina's a really good team too this year. So I thought it was a great win.
Here's at least what I'll say on it. Just coming out of this game, so OU has to face both of these teams this year, both these teams this season. I think I may be more worried about the South Carolina game than I am the LSU game.
I'd probably have to agree with you. I don't know how, like, where OU plays them, but
SC and Norman, LSU at LSU, which does make it tough going to Death Valley.
I was going to say depending on game time for that LSU game, because otherwise I'd be more worried about that one. But no, I mean the South Carolina team is very good. Their defense also is something to be a force to be reckoned with, because they can get to the freaking quarterback.
Well, I was impressed with how South Carolina ran the ball in this game. With they put up 243 rushing yards. Yeah, and that was kind of where Lenore Sellers showed his ability was better in the running game than it was in the passing game. I mean, he had almost as many rushing yards as he did passing yards, but overall he was able to take care of the ball as far as throwing it, and then provide a really dynamic running attack.
Yeah.
So man, that kind of does our recap. I don't want to spend too much time on it. We got a lot to talk about in the preview. We kind of limited our games down, so we can go real quick, hit the top 25. Man, what stands out to you so far as you're just kind of scrolling the top 25?
Well, obviously the first one that everyone already knows about is Texas taking that number one spot. One game we didn't really talk about was the Georgia game. They always struggle with Kentucky. They do it every freaking year that they play them. They won 13-12, of course. That goes back to what I was saying about LSU too. Great teams, when it's not going their way, they still manage to pull it out. Do I believe Georgia's the best team in the country? Yes. But given the performance or lack thereof, and then Texas's performance against UTSA, I believe it was 58-7, 52-7, 58-7, I think. I mean, it's one thing that I say you shouldn't do, as we saw in 2022 when Tennessee took the one spot over Georgia. It's a bad day for the rest of the country, because now, Kirby Smart's got the baggage on everybody. Georgia's going to end up winning a national championship now. But no, it's just one thing to note. Texas takes the one spot, Georgia at 2, Ohio State 3. The only other thing I'd want to know in the top 10 was Tennessee took the 6th spot, swapped with Mizzou at 7. I agree with that personally. I think that Tennessee is the better football team than Mizzou. But other than that, in the top 10, nothing to note really.
Yeah, man, they just keep giving. This is like the. It's why I really want to pick Georgia. We'll discuss it on next week's episode. But Kirby Smart has a lot of ammo going into a bye week to motivate that team. It's tough. It's tough to sell yourself. They already had enough coming into this year, being left out of the playoff last year. But they have a close win. Barely scrape out a win versus Kentucky. He's going to be harping on them for that for 2 weeks. And now
I mean, that's one of those games like if Kirby Smart, they won, right? But going into the bye and their next opponent's Alabama, like, he's going to treat that like a loss.
Oh yeah,
like that's a loss to them. Going into Kentucky and only beating them 13-12. Like, it'd be one thing if they beat them 35-34, right? You score points, you just couldn't stop them, whatever. They couldn't do anything on offense. 13-12. This is a loss to Kirby Smart. And I think with the bye week, it's going to be a tough bye week for Georgia, for that football team going into that Alabama game. So man, it's going to be. Luckily for Alabama, the game's in Tuscaloosa. It's going to be a sold out game, but that Georgia team's coming.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, probably the perfect medicine for this Bulldog team.
Exactly what they needed.
Yeah.
It was another one of the JD Pickell. I was listening to his podcast, and he said it's probably the best thing to happen to Georgia because they still won, right? Wins are wins, but kind of a wake up call, and it's the worst thing to happen to the rest of the country.
Yeah, very well is a good possibility. So moving on, man, we got our predictions. We got a good week. We kind of limited it down. We're only going through 5 games this week. We had to kind of limit it down. So we'll start off. We got USF versus Miami. Who you got in this one?
Well, so before I get to that, what's your record again? I saw it and I forgot. You're 23-9.
Yeah, 23-9.
23-9, and I'm now 20-12. So, still trying to catch up, but going 4-4, you going 5-3 does not help that. So, no, South Florida at Miami. I like USF. Their Barstool USF account is doing what they did against Alabama to Miami. They're just talking a whole bunch of crap on Twitter or X, Instagram and stuff, posting stuff saying that just they're giving Cam Ward a hard time and stuff like that. It's really entertaining. I wish we could pull it up if we had somebody there, but no, I'm going with Miami in this one. I think USF could. Hey, with the first half they gave Alabama, I think they could challenge Miami early. But I think that Cam Ward and company at Miami. I think there's too many playmakers there. I think it could be very similar to that USF Alabama game.
Yeah,
but I think Miami.
Yeah, I think the recipe for USF, if they want to pull the upset on this one, is do exactly what they did to Alabama, and I think their coaching staff is going to sell their players on that. They're gonna say it's like, hey, don't feel like you're overmatched.
You already did it once.
Yeah, you proved it. Now let's do it for 4 quarters. I think they, like I said, I think that's a very good program there. That's another one of the teams that's on the fringe of that group of 5 in the conversation for it. And
that's a head coach that's probably not going to be there too much longer. He's probably going to take that Florida spot. Anyways, I digress.
Yeah. Hey, Billy Napier. We'll talk about him a little later. But I have to agree with you. I'm going with Miami in this one. I almost wanted to predict the upset. It's just I don't know if USF is going to be able to have the pretty much the depth to be able to compete with Miami when it comes to a 4-quarter game. If they're going to have to do it.
That's my biggest thing is the depth. I think the talent and the depth. It's unfortunately not going to be enough, I don't think.
Yeah, I just don't know what that, whenever you do have to get into that USF, second string, third string, how does that, match up? Because, you are going to need them in these games, especially these 4th-quarter games, because, you got to sub players out. You can't keep somebody on the field, all 80 snaps of a game.
Apparently, unless you're Travis Hunter. He had another game with 23 snaps, which I think is his season low. So
insane that he's hey. Props
not to get off topic. Yeah, not to get off topic, but I didn't think it was sustainable. We'll see if it is, but that's pretty damn impressive.
Granted, he does play one of the lesser contact positions, wide receiver and corner. However, that's a lot of running. You got to be in really good shape to be able to run that many reps a game.
Absolutely.
So we're both going with Miami in this one. I predict it's probably going to be close. I think USF will give them a game. If I had to predict at least if they're going to cover the spread, I say USF might keep it within the 16.5 point spread. I would probably lean towards that.
I think this is another game too another one of those teams that we'll really see how good Miami is. I think, and USF, but I think USF showing that they could hang with Alabama at least for a while. We'll see how good Miami actually is, because I know a lot of people do believe in Miami this year. I'm almost sold on them, but I got to see them continue to win. So this is one of those games I think we'll see if Miami's that good or not.
Yeah. So going up the next game, we got USC's first Big Ten matchup. They're going to the Big House, take on Michigan. Monty, what thoughts you got on this game, buddy?
So my first thought on this game was to pick USC because of the hype behind them, and then they probably have a defense now, and the sophistication of the Lincoln Riley offense is too much to match. But then Coach Moore at Michigan, he was talking about going with Alex Orji, and I think they're going to start running the ball. They're going to start trying to not be so, against what their quarterbacks are, and I think that because that's where their strength is, running the ball. I think they're just going to go to that. I think Michigan's going to find themselves this game. I'm picking Michigan.
We got our first difference of the week. First difference of the week.
I knew because you picked USC over LSU. I knew you were going to pick them over Michigan. But I think Michigan's going to get this one. Unless USC is the real deal this year, I think Michigan's going to get this one.
So USC favored by 6 points here. Me personally, when I'm looking at it, I still don't think Michigan's figured out their offense. They didn't.
I will be all just like I was with Florida State. I'll be all out on Michigan if they don't win this one. But until then, I got them.
You're going with the Wolverines here.
Yep.
All right. Well, my thoughts on it, man. They struggled. Michigan, they didn't really dominate Arkansas State, who they played last week. Obviously at home, and I think USC's just pretty much they're going to come in and score too many points. I mean, I think the Michigan defense is good, but Lincoln Riley's going to put up about almost 30 against just about in every game he does. Every game he coaches or he's the offensive coordinator, he's going to put in 30 or, almost at least 30. And Michigan's only scored over 30 points once this season, or not even once. No, they haven't scored 30 points yet.
My biggest thing about it though, about that is that you say that, but then USC's first game against LSU, and LSU has a lesser defense than Michigan does, and it was 20-20 in the fourth quarter. At the end of the fourth quarter. So
that's true. They won
26-20, 27-20.
27-20.
Right? Yeah, and Michigan has a better defense than LSU in my opinion. So that's my biggest thing. And it is still at Michigan.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a close game, but yeah, I'm going with USC on this one. I guess we'll see who ends up winning, whether it be that Michigan defense or that USC offense. I think it's a matchup we're not talking about, but it very well may be decided of what the Michigan offense can do against the USC defense. Those are two units that have a lot of question marks. USC's defense, it looked better against LSU. I think this is going to be another step for them to be able to prove it. And if they're able to stand up and hold Michigan, to a low score, I think USC is going to take it. But we shall see.
We shall.
All right, moving on.
That's a good one. That's a good one to watch.
Yeah, good game to watch there. Moving on, we got Utah going to their first Big 12 game. A lot of new this year, man. A lot of new in 2024. Utah for their first Big 12 game against Oklahoma State. Going to Stillwater to play it. Who you got in this one, Monty?
So this one, I kind of have there's a contingency to it because I know Cam Rising's maybe hurt still. I know he didn't play a whole lot against or at all against Utah State. So I'm going with Utah if Cam Rising plays and is 100%. If he doesn't play or he does play and he's like 85, I'll probably go with Oklahoma State. But on the paper here, I have Utah, assuming that Cam Rising will play. Because I think the main reason why I didn't against Utah State because they thought that they could beat Utah State without him. They had the freshman play, got some experience. That's a good game, and they won. Let Utah State hang around a little bit. I think that's because they started slow on offense. But I think with this game having the implications that it does, these two teams seemingly they're kind of those top two teams in the Big 12, arguably. I think he will play, and it just depends really if he's 100%. I do have the Utes winning this one.
Yeah, from what my understanding is of it is that Cam Rising has I believe it's a finger injury, right?
It's a finger on his throwing arm or throwing hand. So I don't know which one. I heard ring finger, but I don't know for sure. I just know it's on his throwing arm or throwing hand. So we'll see. Maybe that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to save him for this game. He should play. I think they'd be wise to play him. But like I said, if he does and he's 100%, I think they'll be all right.
Yeah, I was gonna. If you weren't gonna go into that contingent, that's what I was gonna do. Like I said, we don't discuss, just for everybody who's listening, we don't discuss our picks usually before the game. Now, granted, Monty can see some of mine if I've already went through and picked them. He can see who I picked. However, I was gonna have the same contingent on this one. If Cam Rising plays, give me the Utes. But if Cam Rising doesn't play, I got to go lean towards Mike Gundy and Alan Bowman.
Yeah.
But
Stillwater itself.
Yeah. So, like I said, we'll see. We're recording this on Tuesday, so we'll see if everything I've seen this week is that Cam Rising is going to be expected to play. They haven't said anything definitive like, hey, Cam Rising will absolutely play, but with it, considering it's a smaller finger injury, you're thinking he's probably going to play for a game like this.
And I think that, in my opinion, he needs to play. I mean, it's like you've had real significant injuries in the past, and that's why you're a seventh year. You know, this is probably, I would assume, your last year. I don't even know if he has any more eligibility legally.
There's no way.
So I mean, it's like, and it's a game like this. Like, this is your last year to do it. I mean, you got to play, dude. You should play.
Yeah, absolutely. So Cam Rising plays. We're both going with the Utes to get the job done in Stillwater.
If he doesn't, we're going with Oklahoma State. So that's the contingency game right there.
Yeah. So like I said, we'll come up. We'll be able to redocument that when we're on the next week's episode. So 2 more games left. We got Kansas versus BYU, or Kansas State versus BYU. Monty, who you got in this one?
So this one I was looking at, and this is actually one of the tougher ones to pick. I think I honestly found this one kind of more tough to pick than that USC Michigan game. I am going with BYU because it's BYU, and I know last week I bet against K-State, and obviously we were wrong there, but this is the last probably the last time I'll do it if I'm wrong. But I think BYU, the fact that it is in Provo, Utah, and that fan base specifically is very, though. I mean, I can't confirm it because I don't know for sure, but I could bet you that that's a sold out game. With how big of a deal it is, and it's a Big 12 game. I mean, it's got implications, and they're both 3-0. It's a ranked team coming to Provo, so I am taking the Cougars on this one. I think it'll be close. I think it'll definitely be close. That's what I said about the Arizona K-State game last week. But I think this one will be if BYU is anything that I think they are.
Yeah, I mean, Provo has proven to be a tough place to play,
time and time again.
And I think, like you said, I mean, it's the BYU's first Big 12 game of the year. I think the confidence within that program, I think they're going to be a little better than what, at least what they were viewed out as the, from the outside. And I think I had to go with BYU. I tossed this one up because, we did doubt Kansas State last week, and they kind of threw it in our face a little bit. But I'm with you on this one. Let's go with BYU. And then after this, if Kansas State proves us wrong once again, we'll just pick them for the rest of the year.
Yeah, man, it's like this next week. I'm either all out on Michigan and all in on K-State. We'll see.
All right, man. Here we are. We have finally reached the final prediction or preview that we got this week. We got Tennessee versus OU. What's your initial thoughts? Hit me with them.
For listeners, background story. This game has been on the schedule since pretty much since OU and Texas were going to the SEC. They, once they figured out the schedule. So me and Murdy have been talking about this game for probably about a year now, give or take. I mean, it's probably been right around a year.
Easy. Over a year.
Oh yeah, probably over a year actually. Yeah. And so this is a big deal. This game. My initial thoughts. I was texting some of my buddies that I went to school with at UT. I was texting with them earlier, because they were asking about how we felt about the game and whatnot, and I said, honestly, I feel better now than I did preseason. only because there were so many question marks with how Nico was actually going to perform. We didn't realize we had this. We knew we had a really good D line, but we didn't realize we had a really good all around defense. Our run game. So, do I feel better about the game than I did preseason? Yes. However, extremely nervous about this game because there's so many things that play into this game, right? As you know, with Heupel, and I mean, the last time Tennessee and Oklahoma played each other in 2015, and Baker Mayfield comes to Neyland, and we go up early, and then they come back late, and they end up winning. And now we're going there, and there's all this hype around us, which we as Tennessee fans know, as soon as you get your hopes up, that's when it all goes down. and going into Norman in this game, and they talk about how big of a deal this game is to Coach Heupel. This is a huge game for Oklahoma because Heupel's coming. So this Oklahoma team, and people don't give them enough credit the last couple of games. I think that they played some good teams this year that people think are, not as good as they actually are, in my opinion. So, yeah, no, I'm scared of this Oklahoma team, especially like you said, if your lineman, if your starting O-line comes back and they all start to figure it out, the only concern I have for OU, this is a good thing for Tennessee. Through 3 games, Jackson Arnold's been sacked 17 times. And we got a really good D-line. So that's the biggest concern on the OU end from me. But no, I'm still scared freaking shitless for this game.
Yeah, so just want to give a shout out to my boy G. I know you're going to be listening this week, man. Thanks to him, I will be at this game in Norman on Saturday. And just a couple things I got for it. So this is going to be the healthiest OU has been this season. OU is going to be returning 7 starters total in this game. That they haven't. They're going to have 3 new starters on the offensive line. One that we only saw for our center, Branson Hickman, transferred from SNU. We saw him for roughly about 10 snaps in week 1. Troy Everett, he was a guard for us last year. He's like a guard / center. Came from App State, was a freshman All-American at App State. Freshman All-American, I think he might have been All-Conference. Don't get me lying. I think he might have been All-Conference at App State as a center. He's beefed up a little bit. He's about 3'10". He had an early knee injury in spring practice. I believe it was like an MCL or something like that. I don't like speculating on injuries too much, just because I know that kind of gets in the weeds a little bit. He'll be coming back, expected back for this week. Probably look to play him at left guard. We also got Jake Taylor, who played a couple snaps for us. I want to say week 2. Played a couple snaps for us against Houston. Was still a little banged up. Ended up sitting out last week. He's expected back at right tackle for us. So hopefully we can get the healthiest this O-line, and maybe the best this O-line has looked is going to be what it's going to be going into this game against Tennessee. We're also expected to return 2 of our 2 wide receivers. Nick Anderson, who scored 10 touchdowns for us last season. We're expecting him back. He hasn't played in any game this year. Hopefully that'll help alleviate some of our concerns as far as height on the outside. It's been looking like at least last week, if you looked, it looked like we had a bunch of JV players out there just because we had Deion Burks, Zion Kearney, and Reagan's, and they're all about 5'8" to 5'11". It's a bunch of smaller guys out there, just kind of lined up across the board. And hopefully with Nick Anderson we get some height back. Andrew Anthony started out for us, was great. Our wide receiver number 1 up to Texas last year. He's tore his ACL in the Texas game. Hopefully he's good enough to where he gave it a couple of snaps in week 1. I think he had like 8 or 9 snaps. Still trying to come back from that ACL injury, which, is tough to do. But he's rounded into about that 12 or 1 year mark which is maybe when you start seeing guys be able to get over at least the mental side of it, being able to trust that knee again.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see if he's going to be able to contribute this week. He's expected to come back and play. Kendall Dolby, our nickelback, and Gentry Williams, one of our top cornerbacks, should be expected back for this week. So it's the healthiest OU's been. We could probably still, man, I wish this game was maybe a little later in the season. Be able to give that OU line a little time to round into form. I don't want to give a prediction yet. Overall, I think it's the Tennessee offense, OU defense. Those are the two strengths of both teams. Even though the Tennessee defense is very good and has performed just as well, if not better, than the offense has up to this point. But what I think Josh Heupel is known for, it's obviously an offensive team, just with him being an offensive head coach and play caller.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely where it starts. I think that just watching that press conference he had after the game on Saturday, I think he really is. He wants to be known as not known. He wants to have the elite defense. He wants to be known to have the elite defense because he is that offensive mind. I mean, he runs that, obviously, that Art Briles air raid offense that he's kind of honed as and tweaked to make his own, and we've seen the success there. But I think he really likes having the elite defense. That's what he talked about in that press conference, saying that the standard here at Tennessee is to have an elite defense. This is the home of Al Wilson, Eric Berry, so having the defense is very important to him, and I think that's going to hopefully be an emphasis in this game, because I actually think the difference in this game is going to be y'all's offense or our defense, rather than because you say, your defense is your strength, and our offense typically is our strength. I mean, we're the number one scoring offense in the country right now. Granted, people can argue about, who we played and whatnot, but nonetheless, it's true. I think the difference makers in this game are going to be our defensive side of the ball, because especially with all the guys you mentioned coming back, like the receivers and stuff, our defensive backfield is going to be tested this week, and it's an away game. And so I don't know how those guys are going to fare when you have your talent back, or for the most part have your talent back on the offensive side of the ball. So I think it's going to come down to pressure on Jackson Arnold and stopping your run game. I think that if our defense can do that, if Jackson Arnold doesn't have the time to throw the ball or threaten our DBs, and then you can't open up the run game, that's when we'll start to have our success, because we'll get the ball back, and then we have the offense that's capable of doing it. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a real key, is if OU is going to be able to extend drives. I think this defense, or OU's defense, can match up well against Tennessee's offense, but if the OU offense keeps going 3 and out, you can't have them out there forever. And, eventually Tennessee's going to start breaking through, and they're going to start scoring points. So I think the key is going to be, like you said, that it's going to be that Tennessee defense, which they've shown to, be able to insanely pressure the quarterback. Secondary's looked very good, at least so far. And whether Jackson Arnold can step up to the plate. I mean, this is a huge game across the nation. College game day is going to be there. I mean, it's OU's first SEC game.
Yep.
They have it at home. I think this is going to be probably the best environment Norman's had. Man, I want to say even maybe since 2012 Notre Dame, possibly the 2017 Ohio State game where Ohio State came. But overall, I think this is going to be an electric environment for a night game. And we'll see. So, Monty, who you got in this one? You going Tennessee here?
So, what I originally said was, going into this game, I feel better, but I'm still extremely nervous. Key factors, I already talked about our defense and getting to Jackson Arnold. The main, and this might sound, cliche, or, what I'm supposed to say or whatever, but I genuinely believe this. this is going to be our first real test of the year, obviously. But it's going to be, I mean, as a starting quarterback, this is Nico's real test. I mean, this is his real test. Going on the road, and he already made that comment preseason about he thrives in big away games. He loves going. He prefers to go away, you know. And this game's going to be that. It's going to be every bit of that. I think that, man, if that dude can I mean, he can't have a 2 interception game like he did against NC State. He's got to be damn near perfect this game if he wants to walk out of this one with a W, unless that defense just purely dominates, which I think there's going to be some. You have a talented offense, so there's going to be some slip ups. You're going to score points, so we need to score points. With that being said, yes, I do think that there is a chance that Tennessee takes this one, and I'm not saying this is my prediction, but there's a chance that Tennessee takes this one by 17 points. With that being said, I am taking Tennessee in a close one.
Yeah, man, this one's tough for me. All right, I have to choose whether or not I'm picking with my heart or I'm picking with my head. Because the logical matchup, the logical train of thought is that Tennessee's going to come in here and they're probably going to cover that 7-point spread. Pretty easily. I mean, Tennessee has just looked downright dominant in all 3 games they played, and whereas OU has looked completely vulnerable in all 3 games that they have played. Even the the early matchup against Temple where OU won 52-3, they still looked vulnerable in it, just with the offense, unable to convert in third down. Now they won by a bunch, but that doesn't really tell the whole story there.
And I want to remind everybody, I told him that I was taking Tennessee prior to the episode. He said that he was making game time decision. So I have no idea who he's picking. I can imagine who, but.
Well, and it's tough. I don't want to keep y'all. I'm going to keep y'all waiting any longer. I am down for being wrong with this one, but go ahead, give me OU here. I'm rolling with the boys. I'm rolling with the boys. Go. You can I'll be wrong and I will eat crap for it. Monty will give me crap all week next week, including next week's podcast. Give me OU in the home environment. I think it's a huge game. It's a huge game with Heupel coming back. A lot of emotional swings probably in this game. I hope the defense can make a couple plays on Nico. Brent Venables is known to kind of be one of the more complicated defensive coordinators and defensive minds. I hope he can be able to scheme some stuff up to maybe that can confuse Nico with his limited starts that he has. So give me OU in a very close, exciting game here.
I would have been honestly more shocked if you picked Tennessee over OU because it is at the end of the day it is one of those toss-up games, right? Like I said, there's a very real possibility that we win by 17.
There is,
but I don't think it's going to happen. I really don't. I think that with the drama behind this one, I think that we're probably going to see OU's best early on performance this year. I mean, or maybe even their best performance all year. Well, it is a big. It's still you're 15. You're number 15 in the country. We're the number 16 in the country. This would be a massive win for Oklahoma.
Yeah, and this would mean a lot for their season. One thing about it that
playoff implications.
Yeah, it gives me at least a little bit of buy-in. OU's a 7-digit dog at home.
Yeah. That's my thing. No, as a Tennessee fan, we're like, no, we don't need that.
Since the Bob Stoops era, man, I couldn't name you. It's got to be at least it's no more than 5. Maybe even less than that. I could, like I said, I'd probably have to go through and look at, figure out how long it's been since they've been a 7-digit dog at home. Granted the Riverville rivalry, it will have it, but that's a neutral site game.
Yeah.
So a 7-digit dog at home, that's a rare position for OU to be in. Give me the Sooners to come out and be feisty in this one. So we'll go ahead.
Only time will tell.
We will see, and I will be there to see it through and either cry my way out of the stadium or I will probably be screaming all the way to my car. So we'll see what happens. Monty, let's go ahead and move on, man. Dub and duds of the week. Who you got as your DUD dud of the week for this week?
So my dud of the week. Hopefully you didn't pick this guy because I definitely did. After the A&M game, Billy Napier, man. It's not an if, it's a when. He's getting fired. I think, yeah, after losing to A&M, I mean, even if they beat Mississippi State this week, which I really think they will, and if they don't, they're in serious trouble of going 1-11. But no, Billy Napier's my dud of the week, man. I think he's on his way out. I think he knows it. I think the Florida team knows it. Hopefully, they play for him because of that. But man, it's a tough year and tough year in Gainesville for Billy Napier. So that's my dud of the week.
See, I almost consider putting Billy Napier as my dub of the week. Just because I think he's got a little Ed Ogeron vibes. You know, whenever they came in, they called him in. They said, "Hey, Coach O, things ain't looking good." He's like, "Yeah, we know, man." And they're like, "We're gonna have to let you go, but we're still gonna pay your, $100 million or whatever his buyout was." And he was like, "Which door you want me out of?"
Yeah.
So I think that's a little bit of a point we got going on with Billy Napier. You know, even if he does get let go, hey, he's still walking away as a very rich man, so not too much to complain with there. But I had to end up going with Florida State here for my dud of the week. I think Mike Norvell.
Man, it's a tough week on this show for Florida.
Yeah, Florida is just not looking good
for the state of Florida, I should say.
Well, Miami's coming back, and it coming back has led to apparently the demise of Florida State. I don't know. So. I don't know what it takes for Mike Norvell to get on a hot seat after a 13-0 season, but he's working very diligently on putting himself there.
Yeah.
So
it's a tough scene down there. I think that they're kind of in a transition year though, with the talent that they lost last year. I think he himself will end up being all right. But Florida State this year, man, it's looking not good. I mean, they have a serious chance of going 0-4.
Yeah, very serious chance. And
yeah,
you start looking at their schedule. It's like, man, where can you pick out a win for them? You know what I mean?
It's like who's actually going to end up having the worst schedule or worst records, Florida or Florida State? We thought Florida State was going to be good, but now we're talking about both of them being 1-11.
Yeah, we got the shit bowl coming fucking week 13.
I guess so, man. Definitely didn't. I mean, we thought everyone was kind of Florida was going to be not that good this year, but Florida State was the surprise. They're both really bad.
I picked Florida State as my winner of the ACC, and I'm gonna go ahead and eat that one. I'm gonna go ahead, just gonna go ahead and write that off. Florida State not winning the ACC this year.
Yeah, no, we're all out. We're all out on Florida State on this show. So
yeah. So moving on, man. Who you got? We like to finish the show, at least on a good note.
On a high note.
High note. So who do you got as your dub of the week?
Yeah, man, my dub of the week this week, it was, man, I got scared there for the past couple weeks, but Oregon found themselves 49-14 win over Oregon State at Oregon State. They gave up 0 sacks on the O-line. That's what we're trying to do. That's what we're waiting on. We were waiting on Oregon to be that. We'd be the last year's Oregon, and they showed it. So they're my dub of the week. They struggle with the whole state of Idaho, but it seems like the in-state rival, they took it to them, and so they're my dub of the week. They found themselves.
Yeah, they definitely did. Oregon's looked. They've played very tight games, at least the first 2 weeks. So I think it was a big statement win for them to come out and actually be able to rack up a pretty good scoring margin against their in-state rival. And Dylan Gabriel, he's looked really efficient, through the first couple weeks, and he's playing at a really high level. It was just they just couldn't get a really big, a scoring gap or scoring win-loss margin. It was always a pretty tight game, so it was good to see Oregon at least try to round into form there.
Yeah, it seems like they're definitely they found themselves, and again, it is still week 3 or going on week 4, but hey, they looked good, and their O-line looked like how they looked last year. So that's probably a good feeling for Dan Lanning there.
Yeah, absolutely. So my dub of the week, Man, this one pains me. Um, I had to go with the Texas Longhorns here. Two reasons. Uh, One is going to be they're the new AP number one team. Uh, I guess that's what you call Texas. They have fulfilled their promise that they've been making for the past decade of, being back.
Being back.
I'd say if you're the AP number one, I think that's officially your new back. Now, granted, they got to hold it out to the end of the year, so we'll see how that goes for them. But I also had to go with them for another week, or another reason is that, man, Quinn Ewers went out of the game with a abdominal strain, and Arch Manning looks really freaking good.
Yeah,
and
he does.
As a Texas fan, man, they got to be excited to know that, not only do they have, they have a good team this year, but with good quarterback play and consistent head
probably
coaching,
the next three.
They probably got a good team for at least the next three.
Yeah.
That's going to be real competitive and real tough to match.
Yeah, no, I mean, Arch did look good.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think that's why I had to make them my dub of the week, is that they not only are they good this year, and, they fulfill their promise of being back, it looks like they may be back for at least a couple more years to still be a problem to deal with.
Potentially quite some time, right? And it's funny that you say that, though, because this actually goes perfectly and right back into my hot take. And for the listeners out there, Murdy does not know my hot take. I told him, but this actually segues perfectly into my hot take. And that is, and I did, like I said, Arch Manning looked good. He did look good. However, this is my hot take, when Texas makes the playoff this year, and this is saying when, not if, whether Quinn Ewers is healthy, or the healthiest, like 100% or not, Arch will not be the answer. Ewers will be the answer, and they will need the experience. And that's so whether he's fully healthy or not, I genuinely believe Sark will play Ewers over Arch when it comes to the playoff, especially if they have to play multiple games in the playoff.
Yeah, I'd say that's.
I mean, he might be the answer next year.
Yeah,
Ewers is the answer when it comes to the playoff, at 100% or at 85%. You need the experience.
I'd say you definitely do, especially when you're playing. You're not playing UTSA probably in the playoff. You're playing a little bit better defenses there.
But hey, that's why that's why it could be a hot take.
Could be a hot take. So you're saying you're going to cool off on the Arch Manning hype because there's.
I still think Ewers is the guy.
I'm not personally saying it, but there have been people that have said, "Hey, is the Texas offense better with Arch? Should Sark consider?"
Yeah, I think that's blasphemy.
Yeah, I think you got to at least going into the SEC with those. There's a lot of teams playing really good defensive ball right now, whether it be South Carolina or Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma. There's going to be a lot of teams that Texas has to face. Texas A&M, they look like they're playing at least pretty good defense. That I think you're going to need Ewers' experience because there's nothing more that a defensive coordinator likes than a young, inexperienced quarterback on the other side to possibly take advantage of.
Absolutely, which goes back to the OU Tennessee game. That's why I'm a little worried.
We shall see what the old Brent Venables can come up with. All right, y'all. That's going to do it for this week's episode. Monty, you got anything you want to say heading out?
Just that we will have an awesome. Somebody's going to have an awesome next week episode, and someone's going to have the worst episode of the show ever. So only time will tell. It's going to be good nonetheless. We'll still talk about the rest of the country, but we'll probably have a lot to say about that game no matter what happens. So,
yeah, gonna be definitely a tough time. Probably trying to schedule it, for either one of us. Whoever comes out on the losing end,
whoever's on the losing end. Yeah, it's probably like, well, maybe we can just skip this episode. But
yeah.
No, we're gonna make sure to get it done.
Yeah,
no matter what.
Well, we want to thank y'all for tuning in, giving us a listen. We've been debating possibly posting the episode a little earlier in the week, give y'all a little more time before Saturday to be able to listen to it. Like I said, we're going to get this one.
It all comes down to the jobs that actually pay us. So,
yeah, unfortunately,
we're trying to work that out, but we're trying to work it out. We're trying to get it to where we posted earlier, so y'all have a better opportunity to listen to the show. But like I said, it all is based on
our
the
other
ones
schedules.
that do pay us.
Yeah. So either way, we thank y'all for tuning in. Please subscribe to the show. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. Wherever you listen to podcasts, follow the show, subscribe to it, set up alerts. We'll be sure to get y'all at least an episode out every week to get y'all ready for a college football recap and a college football preview. If there's anything you want mentioned in the show, please let us know. We'll put it in our weekly mailbag. We'll be sure to discuss it. Other than that, man, that's all we got for y'all. We'll catch y'all next week on the Monty and Murdy College Football Show. Peace.